Well, if you're like a lot of people, you might find yourself continually losing the same 20 pounds over and over again. Well, our next guest says he can help. Dr. Joe Klemczewski specializes in intensive nutritional consulting, where most of his overweight clients are referred to him by physicians. He has multiple degrees in physical and health sciences, including a doctorate in health education. He's the co-author of this book, The Diet Doc's Guide to Permanent Weight Loss: Secrets to Metabolic Transformation. Dr. Joe, welcome to Full Circle.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Now, you know what? It's in the news everywhere. Somebody says, don't eat any carbs. Someone else says, don't eat any sugar. Someone else says, don't eat any fat. It gets kind of confusing after a while. What are we supposed to make of all of this?
Very much so. And that's what I see as one of the biggest things that really makes losing weight and keeping it off such a hindrance, is there's so much misinformation out there, so much contradictory information. People can kind of get plugged into one diet at a time, and if that doesn't work or they just don't like it, they go on to the next one, and they just never really learn what's right for their own body.
Mm-hmm. And so where do we start? Are you saying that diets should be individualized to our own individual needs?
To some degree, for sure. In our book, what we do is start out with a lot of basic physiology. I mean, nutrition, complex stuff brought down to the bottom shelf where everybody can understand it. Taking the most readable, usable, accessible information and making sure that you can take this and start creating a plan that's now going to be unique for you. Something that just doesn't factor in the genetic differences, because there are certainly very genetic differences. All four of you ladies sitting here right now, I guarantee you have different metabolic rates, different genetics. You need different foods, different types of foods, and more importantly, almost, is you like different types of food. You're in different phases of your life, different different family structures. So we all need to be able to create something that we can do and that's sustainable.
What is the like? If you could just first explain what the metabolism is and what it does, and why it's different.
Metabolism is just a measurement of how much energy we need every day. So most people believe that the average human being needs about 2,000 calories a day, and that's about right for me. I actually have a genetically slow metabolism. There's a lot of obesity in my family history and so forth. But I'm also very active. I train, once a day at least as an athlete and professional bodybuilder. So for me, that's about what I need. For most women, it's probably down in the 1,500 to 1,800 calorie range. So it's just how many calories we need per day. But then that should be looked at even a little bit deeper. Out of those calories are macronutrients, protein, carbohydrates, and fats, as you mentioned. And we have to know what those do in our body and how much we need, and then we can get into the quality issues and so forth. And you can take it as far as you want, but just starting out with those basics and learning as you go is very critical.
And that's the tough thing, right? We don't want to learn all of that. We just want to take a pill. Like I noticed in your book, you mentioned those drinks that you can take that lose weight while you sleep.
Right.
Like, why can't we just take a pill and lose weight while we're sleeping? Yeah.
It's something we have to contend with. Those of us who are really trying to help people in the industry, we know we're fighting against the tide where there are so many advertisements out there where people are just offered these quick self-help things. And it's what we gravitate toward. We want to take the path of least resistance, and we end up trying some of those things. And you're exactly right. We have to dig in at some point. We have to learn some things and then start applying that. And that's what frees us at the end. That's what makes it so sustainable, so permanent, is once we've lost that weight, we've learned some things about ourselves, we've learned some things about nutrition, so we're not just a slave to that ignorance.
Ironically, too little calories per day slows your metabolism.
Absolutely. That's a big factor with some of the low-carb diets. We had some callers on a Christine's show the other day, and what happens is people who go on too low of a carbohydrate diet, or they just eat too few calories, they don't understand you can suppress your metabolism. Some studies have shown by almost 50% within just a couple of months.
But you know what? The low-carb diet does work. I mean, you do see results when you cut your carbs almost completely out. The sugars, the carbs, all of that, and you just eat a lot of protein, you start to lose weight, but that's not really a sustainable lifestyle, is it? Plus, it's not very healthy.
Well, it's not practical, and you touched on a very critical element, which is that carbohydrates are a two-edged sword. And what happens is carbohydrates are the biggest thing we have to watch and control initially, because they are what provide most of our energy. All the cells in our body, over 50 trillion cells in our body, they all need glucose for energy, so we have to have that. We need a certain amount. It's what increases our metabolism. But at the same time, if we're giving our body all the carbs we need, we don't force it to look for an alternative source, which is our body fat. So there's an upper level that you just have to make sure you're not going over, because you need to lower it to lose, but you can't go so low you suppress your metabolism.
Right. But most of us don't have a degree like you do in these things and understanding how our body works and metabolism and everything. So how do you know then what your body needs and how to go, how do you break that down?
And that's exactly why we wrote the book like we did. I almost consider it, very manual-like, where you go through each chapter builds on the next. We start out with just explaining metabolism, and then we go into meals creation, meal spacing. Then we get into the macronutrients, carbohydrates, fat, protein, and there's a 6-week implementation guide where if you just take 1 week at a time, here are your only objectives for that week. Then you can build on that. And that's the most important thing, is look at this just like you would learning a musical instrument. You wouldn't walk into a guitar player and say, I want you to teach me how to play guitar tomorrow. I mean, I want to actually have my first concert tomorrow. It's a process of learning. And so you have to just get into it and start learning, and that's what teaches you, about your own body as well.
Now, one thing I really liked about your book, it starts off with all of the doctor talk. All of the stuff that we need to educate ourselves about, the carbs and the proteins and what we need, and good carbs and bad carbs and all of these different measurements. But also you include in here personal stories. And you have before and after pictures, and you really do encourage us that this can help, it can be done. But there's one thing special about today's program, is we have our own personal before and after story right here on the couch. Cheryl?
Yes, today I'm coming out, I'm confessing that 10 years ago, I was quite a bit heavier, 60 pounds heavier actually. And so it's been about, I think we're gonna have a picture here.
There it is.
Wow.
Which is a little embarrassing, but, and exciting too, because it's been about 9 years that I've lost that weight. I think I initially lost like about 50 pounds, so lost a little more since then, and kept it off, which is the big challenge, right? Which I actually don't believe in dieting. Any change that I have made to my lifestyle, I took a long time to think about it and thought, can I maintain this for the rest of my life? Because the reason I gained so much weight was through yo-yo dieting, was the whole suppress your metabolism, go on these crazy diets, lose all this weight, gain back more than you started with, diet again. That was my whole life. And so I just said, okay, that's it, I'm not dieting. Whatever change I make has to be for the rest of my life. I have to count the cost and think about how can I reasonably do this with my lifestyle, my schedule, my temptations, my weaknesses, and then work around that, So I agree, I think permanent weight loss, it has to be for the rest of your life.
It's awesome work. Good job. 60 pounds, that's great.
Yay, Cheryl!
Yeah.
And that brings up such an important point, is that, you looked at this as something that's going to have to change in your life. And it starts out with that motivation. At some point, after some failed attempts at dieting, I think everybody comes down to the point, hopefully, where they're just not going to throw up their hands and just concede to failure. But hopefully we reach that point where we say, this is going to take some effort on my part. It's not always going to be easy, but you can make it fun. You certainly don't avoid all, decadent foods. I'm sure you indulge a little bit here and there. And so it's like you said, counting the cost. One of the biggest things we teach people right off the bat is we have to track something objectively. We have to know within the Diet Docs RX, what we create in there is a beginning point for everybody. You can plug yourself into your demographic, and here's a range of protein that's right for your body, and carbohydrates and fat. And then we start the process of fine-tuning with your body. If you're losing too fast or too slow, here are the parameters you should be in. Here's how we can make some adjustments, and you start learning more about your body, which is what you obviously did.
And there's hope for everyone. I mean, Cheryl did a fantastic job, but I remember a 450-pound man asking you, could I lose the weight? I'm preparing for knee surgery. Can I lose the weight? Because he can't move about the same way somebody Cheryl's age could move about. 450 pounds, and you said, yes, there's always hope.
Absolutely. I deal with a lot of the hard cases. I mean, some people who have failed on other diets, some people that are seeking medical attention, those are a lot of the clients I get. And if you're looking at the hardest group to work with, people who have been beaten down and people who have a lot, to lose, people that may have true metabolic issues, low thyroid hormone, the genetics for morbid obesity, which have to be there to gain that much weight in the first place. And yet you can do it, absolutely.